And welcome to another edition of Beyond the Endzone. It's your host, as always, Nathan Lee. And we got a lot to talk about. I mean, everyone knows if you're watching or if you're a sports fan, you know how crazy life is right now and where we are in the season, specifically for football. College football it is delivering. Obviously, some question marks on the system when it comes to the playoffs. We'll kind of hit on that a little bit. But obviously, we got to talk about Ole Miss defeating Tulane and moving on to the Sugar Bowl. We'll have a recap of that game as well as a preview on their next matchup, another CFP rematch against the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, we'll also have some reactions to the other first-round games, kind of give you my thoughts on what I saw out there, as well as a preview into those other games. We're not going to do game picks for those games yet since they're next week. We'll hold that for next week's Beyond the Endzone episode, but I did want to give you all a little bit of insight into what I'm thinking on those games. And then obviously still back here in the state, Southern Miss, they did fall short in their bowl game out there in New Orleans. We'll kind of recap that in their season as a whole, kind of talk about all that. And then Mississippi State, Ole Miss plays on the first, Mississippi State plays on the second in the Duke's Mayo Bowl against Wake Forest. We'll kind of talk about that game a little bit. And then the Saints, they let them get hot. We'll kind of talk about what we're seeing from them right now as they come to their last two games in the season. They could end the season one game out of the division, which is insane when you think about where the Saints were at one point this season. But, of course, we got to get right into it. There's just so much to talk about, and we got to get started with that game against Tulane for Ole Miss. It was the same exact game as the first one. I know all week y'all saw my coverage. I was kind of feeling bad after the result. I was telling y'all it's going to be a different matchup. That's what the coaches are saying, different matchup. Well, it was the same exact football game as before. It was a 4-point difference as the game back then at the start of the season. I mean, like, it was kind of one of what do you expect games? Immediately Ole Miss goes down the field in 3 plays and scores, and it was kind of like already like, okay, that's how this game's going to go. Ole Miss's offense, like I said, was just going to be way too much. I thought Tulane's offense would show a little bit more, but nothing. Ole Miss's defense was really prepared for this game, came away with that early turnover, and the momentum was completely on their side. Only was ahead 17-3 at the half, but then the second half comes and they show exactly who they are, specifically offensively. There's not much to say in this game. Ole Miss was just a much better team. We knew exactly how this game was going to go. And that gets into that conversation. Do we allow these group of 5 teams in the playoffs? That's a whole conversation that I could do an entire episode for. But I think we can all agree that there is a skill difference when you just talk about the size and speed. I mean, Ole Miss, that was the fastest touchdown in college football playoff history. 3 plays, I think it was less than a minute. It was big from the beginning. It was over. I do want to give my credit out there to Ole Miss, Oxford out there. It was an unbelievable environment at the Vaught. First time I've ever got to go to a playoff game at a home site. They did it right. The Grove, it was just, everything was incredible. I want to give that shout out there. And we got some Georgia fans in the comments here. Hey, I love the passion, brother. I love the passion. We got a big game and might as well get right into it, because guess what? We got Ole Miss versus Georgia. Georgia is the early favorites in this one. And, another rematch. It's kind of wild. Ole Miss is drawing these playoffs, right? You get a rematch against Tulane, then you get a rematch against Georgia. If you don't remember that first matchup, what a game it was. I mean, it was really a special game out there in Athens. And, that was kind of, there was questions going to that game about Georgia. Is Gunnar Stockton that guy? Well, that game he showed up and showed out and showed you exactly who he is and what that offense can be. And obviously, neither defense really showed up in that game, and it's mainly because of how good these offenses are. I don't got enough good things to say about Georgia. They might be the hottest team in the playoff right now, and you might just want to throw away that might. I think that's they have a very strong case for that. But being hot back in 3-4 weeks ago, that doesn't matter. You got to get off that layoff for the Bulldogs. But for this game, what an interesting matchup out there in the Sugar Bowl in the Superdome. I can't wait to get out there and bring y'all all the coverage. And when you look back at that first game, give y'all a quick little recap in that one. It was mainly excuse me, right there. It was a one-score game, if you forget. One-score game. It came down to that fourth quarter. And who showed up? The Dogs showed up, and it was that just some of that veteran experience that you saw out there. It was pretty impressive to see what they did out there in that fourth quarter, and it really came down to the fourth quarter. If you forget, Ole Miss was leading going into the fourth quarter. And Georgia they buried, defensively, they stepped up, made just enough stops, and then offensively, they showed up in that fourth quarter. Was really impressed. And I don't want to go into these coaching cliches about what these two teams should do. I'm not a coach. I'm not going to act like I know exactly what I'm saying, but when you hear from these coaches, we've heard from them this week, the biggest talking points are those main talking points we hear from every single coach, kind of the coach speak, but turnovers, explosive plays, situational football playing complementary between all three phases. That's what's going to be needed in this game. And obviously, which defense shows up. That was a big factor in the first one. I've already laid it out. There's really no defense in that game until Georgia made the big stops at the end of the game. That's just, Kirby, man, he's just so good in these kinds of games as well. When we talk about rematches in big time moments, and the lights are never too bright for his team. They got all that playing in their favor. I got to be honest, though, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Ole Miss. Not on the field. What we saw against Tulane is what we expected. I'm not talking about that. Obviously, you want them to go out there and beat down Tulane, and that's exactly what they did. But when you look at this team from the videos from the season that they're having, it's a show that they do on YouTube and stuff. Just the mentality of this team now with Pete Golding as the head coach, I'm really liking what I'm seeing. I think it's really impressive, the mentality this team has. And I get it. It's a different era. A lot of these kids aren't from Ole Miss, from Oxford, from Mississippi. Some of them are, but it's a team of transfers, and that's just the world we live in. So there's a little bit less, growing up your entire life. I want to be, an Ole Miss Rebel fan, or I want to be, or not a fan, a player. I want to be, a player for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Those things aren't as prevalent as we've seen with the transfer portal money being involved. I think the players should be paid. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but it's just kind of a different era. Just, I love the mentality of this team. And they're going to have a real strong mentality when you go against this Georgia team. From what we've seen at the end of the year, unbelievable finish for the Georgia Bulldogs. That's why I'm saying they're the hottest team right now, and it's rightfully so. It's hard not to look at that team, but I do want to lay out, this is not the same Georgia team, even though we're starting to see defensively those improvements at the end of the year. It's not the same kind of pass rush Georgia has had in years past. That's just a fact. You look at the stats, it's right there. It's not the elite of the elite Georgia defense. Still a good defense. I don't want to bury them or nothing. But we saw in that first game how many points Ole Miss was able to put on the board. You saw also how many points Georgia was able to put on the board. I got to start these playoffs. I said Ole Miss's offense, it can compete with anybody because it can. Georgia is one of those teams that has an offense that also can compete with Ole Miss. So if we're getting into another shootout, obviously, if you're in a shootout with these two offenses, it kind of just comes down to which team makes a mistake, and you get back to those coaching cliches I kind of laid out. The turnovers, I think that's such a massive piece in this game. Also for Ole Miss, I really also want to see, if it comes down to it, you're getting into these shootouts and all this stuff. It's so important to find a touchdown or points that aren't from the offense, special teams, kick returns, punt returns, defensive turnovers that turn into points when we talk about a pick six or a fumble recovery for a touchdown. I think both teams are going to have to find one of those. Not both teams. The team that wins is going to have to find one of those, because I don't see this being another shootout. I just don't see it this big of a moment. I could see both of these teams being a little bit, timid at the start. Now, we could see Ole Miss go right out there, or Georgia, and score as fast as they did against Ole Miss did against Tulane. That's very possible. I'm not saying that's not, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a slow start. But we got to hear from both of these coaches, and they kind of lay out what I'm talking about here when we talk about these coaching cliches. I want y'all to hear what both of these coaches, Pete Golding and Kirby Smart, had to say ahead of the matchup.
And I think that's the biggest thing. They've been in a lot of big games, and Kirby does an unbelievable job. They don't panic. There's something that you're going to have to close out the game in the fourth quarter, just like we didn't do last time. So got to play really sound, regardless of who you play at this point. You got to execute, and you got to take care of the football on offense. We got to take it away on defense.
It's really overrated in terms of rematches and things like that. I think it's, how you play defines what the outcome of the game is. Your ability to be explosive, not turn the ball over, win situational football, middle eight. There's all kinds of things in that thing that figure it out, and it really has very little to do with the time before you played them.
And I love what both of these coaches have said. I got a lot of respect for both these coaches. I mean, Kirby Smart, his track record speaks for itself. He's unbelievable when it comes to especially these big games. Pete Golden, obviously brand new, only one win under his belt, and it's a college football playoff game. Such an interesting matchup. Can't wait to bring you all the content from this. Obviously, we're going to hear from both teams, more staff and players ahead of the matchup this weekend. We'll bring you all that coverage, but that's just the start of it. We're going to be out there in New Orleans to give you all continued coverage from New Orleans. I love New Orleans. I'm kind of not a native, but I got family from there. So love New Orleans. Can't wait to see the environment out there. We're going to bring up plenty of content. We have a media day on Tuesday. We'll hear from both teams. And then on Wednesday, we'll have a parade, get that fan reaction and bring that all to y'all. And then obviously Thursday, January 1st, we'll get kickoff. Can't wait for this matchup. It's very interesting. It's Georgia is tough right now. Georgia is tough, but I really love what I'm seeing from Ole Miss, the mentality, obviously the play on the field offensively, the way they stepped up defensively against Tulane. I know I don't want to keep burying Tulane. I understand there's a level difference between a Tulane and a Georgia. I understand that very, very well. But you go out there, you did exactly what was needed, and they did it, pretty impressively. So big time matchup. Can't wait to see it. We're going to have much more next week in our next episode of Beyond the End Zone from out there in New Orleans. Hopefully in the hotel room from New Orleans, I'll be able to put something together to kind of preview this game and my full game picks for this one, as well as our other games in the college football playoffs. So let's go right ahead and get into this. This is what a big time matchup this was and how it turned out in the end. I mean, crazy. I did not get this game right. I did say Oklahoma was going to get Alabama again. And when you watch the game at the beginning, you thought that. I mean, goodness, 17-0. Oklahoma was just rolling on all cylinders. Couldn't quite hold on, though. Alabama, what they just showed unbelievable fight. Did not see that from this Alabama team. Was not kind of when I was looking at this team, I didn't expect them to be a team that could come back 17-0. Now I know it was super early in that game, plenty of time to do it. I just didn't think they had that kind of drive, that kind of dog in them to be able to pull off something like that. Impressive game, when you talk about just the adversity, right? That's what the playoffs are, adversity. All these teams that, maybe they've been riding high all year. They maybe haven't faced as much adversity as other teams. You look at Alabama's schedule. I mean, they went through a gauntlet. I mean, when you talk about their SEC schedule compared to other teams, even in Ole Miss, I got a lot of love for Ole Miss. When you look at the SEC schedules compared to others, they kind of got an easier trek than some of these other teams, and specifically Alabama, the run that they had to go through before that first Oklahoma game, which they lost. They may just a little bit, some of that gas may have not been full in the tank, and they kind of got caught sleepwalking in that game, and then come out this one. I think the environment was massive in Norman. I think that was a big factor to why Oklahoma had such a big start. I mean, if you weren't watching the game, it looked crazy out there. I mean, I think I know 50 Cent was out there at some point, but then I saw the Alabama players, love Miniman. They listen to it all the time, so that kind of motivated them more. So just wanted to just kind of put this one up here and just give credit to Bama. What an impressive win to be able to just fight back and get through all that from the start of the game. But Oklahoma's offense just they fell to the wayside after such an incredible start. Obviously 17-0, and then look at the end of the game, it's 34-24. Getting outscored like that is unbelievable. But next up is the Indiana game, Alabama versus Indiana. Like I said, we're not doing game picks for these, but I do want to kind of preview this matchup. What a game this is going to be. We live in a world where Indiana football is favored in the playoffs against Alabama. Crazy how times have changed in this amount of time. I mean, this is a 3-year thing, right? I mean, Indiana is this year 2, but when we talk about, the rise and kind of the changing of guard for Alabama, Saban to DeBoer, and now Indiana with Cignetti, cannot wait for this game. What a game it's going to be. This is the 3:00 kickoff on New Year's Day. IU is that 6.5-point favorite. Interesting game, When you look at the teams, I think Indiana's offense might be too much for Bama, just kind of my early sense. But when you look at just experience, the medal, and I know it's not Saban running the Bama team, but, experience, all those things matter. And the this team and this program and this brand, it's been here before. Indiana, they were in the playoffs last year, but they weren't here. They weren't in the quarterfinals. They lost in the first round. I think that actually matters big time in this game, just for the mentality of the team. But man, I take Indiana's mentality, and I'll take Mendoza over almost anybody right now. Big time game, big time matchup. I can't wait to get like a little bit deeper into like the breakdown of this one, because right now my sense is that, Oklahoma's offense is not great. And you saw what they did to start. Indiana's offense is incredible. Can Bama stop that Indiana offense enough? I think Ty Simpson is great. I think he's going to be fine in these big moments. But Bama, can they get that run game? Can it keep going? We saw a little bit of it against Oklahoma. Can they keep doing that? And then defensively, you got to find some stops. So early look at that game. Very interested in how that plays out. Obviously, next week we'll have a game pick. Let's keep on moving though. Let's get to the Miami Texas A&M game. Not much to talk about in this one besides the crazy wins and no offense. It was kind of a snooze fest to start our Saturday of these games for the playoffs. Miami did what they needed to do. Not much more I could say about it. A&M would have fall off at the end of the year, losing to Texas, and then this one where the offense can do anything. I think people also need to acknowledge how crazy the the conditions were, specifically that wind, unreal winds. We saw those kicks just go one side of the upright all the way to the other one. So I think that played a massive factor into, why it's only a 10-3 game. But Miami, impressive. When we talk about rosters, man, Miami's matches up is with anybody in the country. Early on, I don't know if y'all were watching early in the season, I was high on Miami. They were one of my favorites. They had those 2 unranked losses to ACC teams in the middle of the year. It's like, okay, can't defend them as much anymore. Talent wise, it's there, but is it a team? That's a big factor in this. Is it a team? I like what I'm seeing from Miami. Now they get Ohio State. Now Ohio State is a 9.5-point favorite. Big time game. Biggest spread of the weekend, or biggest spread for the quarterfinal games. Still one of the most interesting games in my opinion. Defense versus defense. Ohio State's going to want to get that bad taste out of their mouth. Big time game here. I'm leaning on Ohio State, obviously the champs, but man, I love Miami's talent, man. I think that is such an interesting matchup. When you talk about defense versus defense, could be another low scoring game. Got to keep on moving though. Oregon, James Madison, not much more to say about this one. Oregon gets a massive lead. Obviously, James Madison backdoor covers, but Oregon had third stringers out there. They got pulled to put back in starters. Just get the Power 5 out of here. Not going to say much more about it. Now they get Texas Tech, and I think this is the game of the weekend. This game right here, it's the 11 a.m. kickoff out there for New Year's Day, and man, I don't know who's going to win. I had no idea who's going to win this football game. No idea. Right now, I have no pick. I love Texas Tech all year, man. I've loved this team. I think they're still underrated, even though the 4th-ranked team in the country. I think that's where they should be ranked. I'm just saying, when we talk about championship aspirations, I think they are right there with everybody. I love their team, love their offense. The linebacker for him, I think he should have got some more praise when it comes to the Heisman, and defensive players don't get a lot of love for that, Rodriguez. But unbelievable team for Texas Tech going against an Oregon team, that's has been in these playoffs. Dan Lanning, it's hard to bet against a guy like that. Massive matchup. And I think it's the most interesting matchup of the weekend. Closest game. Oregon is favored in that one, 2.5. Like I said, once again, next week we will have game picks from all of these matchups. But let's keep on rolling, and we'll talk about some Southern Miss now. We don't got much time here, but I did want to kind of wrap up with some Southern Miss talk and some Mississippi State talk as we get to the end of this episode. So let's get right into it. Excuse me, get that rolling. Here we go. Yeah, Southern Miss, they took on Western Kentucky in the New Orleans Bowl on Tuesday. They did end up losing. Couldn't finish the season on a high note, 27-16. Golden Eagles, they had a solid start in this game, moving 13-6 at halftime, but they got outscored 21-3 in the second half. Tough break for them in the second half. I was watching. I was really impressed with what I saw, especially with all the coaching changes in that first half. I was really impressed, but even though they did not finish the season the way they wanted, Coach Blake Anderson, the new head coach out there, doesn't want to discount their improved 2025 season and what they're building for the future. I've included some of what he had to say in postgame, as well as something that Braylon said. Just loved what he had to say. they're kind of talking about some of these kids' future, and he's like, "Easy, y'all. Like the season just ended. I just wanted to include this." So let's see what they both have to say.
I don't want to lose sight to what this senior class did and what this team did in general. Most people don't make that jump, right? So let's give them respect and credit for what they did, and then we'll work the problem in the offseason where we can get better in every phase. We can get better at everything. This is not a one-year fix. This is take the next step, build on what we did, and try to stabilize the program for the future.
I just want to say something about these two youngins next to me, bro. Sorry, this is really off topic, but like these boys right here, y'all don't understand. This might be the best linebacker and the best safety in the country. And I don't feel like it's just fair to them to, ask them what they plans are right now, because they got a lot going on. They just played their last game with some of their best friends. Like I was talking to Corey in the hotel room last night. I'm like, is it weird that some of my best friends is 3 and 4 years younger than me? Like, is that weird? And it's like, it's just stuff like that. Like this stuff, it's hard, bro. Like Chris said, the new age of college football, you make bonds with guys, for 2 years, 1 year, and then the next year they gone. You don't even know if you ever gonna see them again. So like, take it easy on my guys, man. These guys are great guys. Whatever they do, they're going to be great. I tell them boys all the time, if you go, if you stay, if you stop playing football right now, whatever you do, bro, you're going to be straight. If you decide you want to go be a PE teacher, bro, y'all boys going to be straight whatever they do. So I love these two young guys next to me, man.
Just love what Braylon had to say there. Wanted to include that for y'all. The definition of a leader. Great year for Southern Miss. Couldn't finish on a high note. They finished the season 7-6. Their first 7-win season, though, since 2022. Also did want to bring up our – let's see, 1 second here. Did want to bring up this. Did want to talk about our Mississippi State Bulldogs. They are going to be taking on Wake Forest in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Will Levy get a mayo bath after this one? Can't wait to see that. That takes place on January 2nd. Mississippi State, they want to end the season on a high note as well. Big-time game, big-time opportunity against an 8-4 team. Obviously, some people did not think we would see Mississippi State in the bowl game. Obviously, next week we'll have a little bit more of a preview breakdown of that game, as well as hearing from head coach Jeff Levy. We'll hear from him this weekend, and we'll make sure to bring you all that content from what we get this weekend from him ahead of the playoff matchup out there in Charlotte. So, all right, let's keep this thing going. Next up, we got our New Orleans Saints. They let them get hot to finish the season. They're on a 3-game winning streak, and now they're heading out there in Nashville this weekend to take on the Tennessee Titans. They are now favorites for back-to-back weeks. Yes, I know, it's crazy. We're in a world where the Saints are favored in back-to-back weeks. Unbelievable turnaround. Not really turnaround, just kind of growing into this team. Love what I'm seeing right now. But the team's not worried about being a favorite or anything like that. Head coach Kellen Moore's focus, once again, is to keep his team from playing down the competition.
I think the NFL's got highs and lows, and you can ride this NFL roller coaster, and it's one wild ride every single season, no matter what type of season you have. Go all the way to the end or not. And so I think it's about just kind of keeping it even keel, keeping it neutral, as we like to say, like kind of take out all the emotional aspect of this thing, keep it as factual as you can. Here's the things we're doing well. Here's the things we got to improve on. Here's who our opponent is. I think if you're clear and concise with that, then it allows our guys to have the focus that's needed.
And that game kicks off in Nashville at noon. Can't wait to see if the Saints can get their 4th straight win. And with that being said, we only got a little bit of time left, so I want to get into some game picks. Now, like I said, we're not doing college games, the college football playoff games. We got some good bowl games. I thought we might as well do some NFL games. We got some Saturday games as well as our New Orleans Saints. So let's move on to that right now. Yes, we got the Texans versus Chargers tomorrow. That is our first game of our Saturday slate. A massive game when we talk about the playoffs and seeding and, where these two teams are right now. The Chargers are 1.5-point favorites just under 40 at that 39.5 mark, 3:30 kickoff. Like I said, man, I love Jim Harbaugh. I love what I'm seeing from the Chargers right now, but man, that Texas defense, I would not want to play them in the playoffs at all. Best defense in the league, bar none. No doubt about that. So I'm going to lean Texans here. Very low scoring game. May not be the most entertaining Saturday game, but I got the Texans pulling it off and getting to their 11th win of the year. At the beginning of the year, that we did not think that was possible after the kind of the tough start. Injuries for CJ Stroud. Love what I'm seeing from this Texans team right now. defensively, and then offensively, they're finding their groove, which scary team if they find their groove offensively. Next game, Ravens-Packers. Ravens not playing for much. Packers, they still can win the division technically. Very, very tough road to get there. Need a lot of help to get there, but obviously playoff seeding, being as high as a seed as possible, as what they're playing for as well. Obviously no more Micah Parsons, but still a good team, right? I don't know if they're a championship team anymore without Parsons, but I still like what I'm seeing from the Packers. Love does not look like he's playing. Malik Willis did look good, so I think the Packers are still going to be a little too much in this one for the Ravens. Not liking what I'm seeing from the Ravens. All right, let's move on to your New Orleans Saints. They're taking on the Titans. Can the Saints win their 4th straight game? I say yes, they will, and I think we get another amazing game from Tyler Shuck. What he's done this season has been incredible. Give me the Saints in this one. And probably a comfortable win. I wouldn't mind seeing something like that. But that's all for right now. I cannot wait to bring y'all coverage from out there in New Orleans next week. It's going to be a dream for me, and I can't wait to bring y'all as good of content as possible. So y'all are staying up to date as we get closer and closer to that college football playoff game against Georgia. I do want to give – I know he was real active in the chat. I do want to give some love to my Georgia fan. Hey, I get it, man. I understand where you're coming from. I love the passion. Hey, it's going to be a great game. Can't wait to bring you all that coverage and much more. Obviously, stay tuned right here on the Watch Live app if you're watching on the WLBT app for the 4 p.m. newscast that is coming up in just moments. But once again, I'm Nathan Lee. This is Beyond the End Zone. Next week, we will be out there in New Orleans to bring you plenty of coverage from the Sugar Bowl. Thank you all for joining.